Steve, let's dig into the economic impact that this war has had already in less than 3 weeks of fighting. Roughly 1/5 of the world's crude oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah. We haven't really seen the strait kind of come to a halt like this. There were some disruptions in the 1980s during the Iran-Iraq War, but really it's at a level that we haven't seen. And we're in a midterm election year. Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about those dynamics. You know, obviously the White House is concerned, and there's no question about it. Yeah. How does that manifest itself?
A couple of important points. The White House did make this very public move of releasing oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. But as I understand it, that reserve can release 1 to 2 million barrels of oil per day. Oil is a global market, 100 million barrels a day. Something like 20 million has stopped, only 1 or 2 million coming in. Some others from other millions from some other countries. But we're way short, which means that shortages will compile over time, will build up over time. And that means prices going up. People have already noticed higher gas prices. When I talk to people, there are people who do not follow politics, who actively say, I don't want to pay attention to politics, but they notice their gas price. I want to add another point about this. Americans support the military, support their country in times of urgency and war. And I'm sure that Americans would put up with a degree of sacrifice, but nobody has asked them to do so. The president has yet to address the nation in a formal way. He's done some social media posts and talked to a lot of reporters, but has not asked the nation for anything particularly. And we've discussed at this table how it's not entirely clear what the strategic aims of the war are. And although the administration has cast Iran as having fired the first shot over 47 years, in the sense of this war, the administration started it. And so the public is being asked to pay a higher and higher price, and they were not given a reason why. And they weren't consulted in advance. And Congress did not go on record in favor of this, as has been the case in many other conflicts. Even if there was not a formal declaration of war, there was usually some kind of vote.
I'll stay with you for one more question, because you know you had a fascinating interview with Senator Ron Johnson about a week ago, where he was almost reluctant to say that Congress would vote on an issue like this, where there's so much division within Congress on a war that is now American troops are dying in.
Yeah, it was striking. I mean, the Republicans voted down the War Powers Resolution, the War Powers Law, that would have put limits on the president. Okay, that's one thing. But my question for Senator Johnson was, since you favor the war, which Senator Johnson does, should there be an affirmative vote of Congress for this, as there was with the Iraq War, as there was with the Persian Gulf War, and a lot of others that we could name? And he said, no, we shouldn't do that because that would show our divisions. And that is striking for a couple of reasons. One of them being, even when there's been a closely divided Congress, they had a vote, like the Persian Gulf War, 1990, 1991. But also, he's acknowledging it would be a tough vote in Congress to prevail.
Right. Mark, you've spent a lot of time reporting across the region, especially in the Gulf, where you and I were passing ships at some points. Talk to me about the Arab Gulf countries in particular. You know, they were no friend to Tehran and had a lot of tension with Iran over the years, and some of them have even normalized relations with Israel. But they are really getting hit hard in recent days. Talk about how that's been impacting those countries in the GCC.
Well, and it's not only strikes against American bases in the region, it's commercial hubs in the Gulf, it's tourist areas, it's skyscrapers, it's hotels, it's hitting them hard, and they are in a bind because many of these countries have a lot of animosity towards Iran, yet
they've equipped themselves, especially for
they've managed to deal with Iran over the years, and they don't love the regime, but they don't love chaos in the region. And especially if you look back to October 7th and the number of wars that have gone on in the Middle East, in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Iran, the Arab countries in the Gulf are really in a bind. And you can see a point where, if this goes on longer, that there's more and more pressure from the Gulf on Washington and the Israelis to wrap this up. So we'll start looking at that.
Do you think that you know, this bodes well for especially Saudi Arabia's intentions to possibly normalize with Israel, when it seems that, you know, on the one hand, their interests are along the same lines, on the other hand, divergent in terms of the impact this is having on the region?
It is hard to see any prospect of that anytime in the future. I think it was close, actually, before October 7th, because effectively the Palestinians were put to the side. But when you see what's happened since October 7th and in Gaza and what Israel is doing as part of the war in Iran, it is hard for the Saudis, for even an autocrat like Mohammed bin Salman, to sell to the Saudi public that he should normalize relations with Israel. So I think we're a long way away.
And so, Felicia, just to kind of conclude here, we have about 30 seconds left. What's next for President Trump in terms of where he takes this, how he sells this to the American people?
I think either he escalates tremendously or he finds some sort of off-ramp. I think most of the diplomats I talked to suggest that there will be a time to talk, and that even though, the new supreme leader might be the most radical person yet, he is someone who would be credible to end it. So we'll see.
Definitely something that we're going to have to watch very closely. Thank you so much. We're going to have to leave it there, but thank you to our guests for joining me, and thank you at home for watching.